All right, today I have Robyn MoonShadow Dale with me. Robyn, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and some of your background?
Hi, Q. Hi, everybody. My name is Robyn, of course. I've been investigating the paranormal and cryptozoology for about 30 years. I've just stayed under the radar and done my own little investigating, although everybody around my area here in Ontario, Canada, kind of knows what I do by now. I've looked into ghosts and haunted houses, cemeteries, Bigfoot, of course. I've never seen a dog man, but I do look when I go out. And recently I started investigating the hidden people, or what we call the little people.
So, what were some of your first experiences with the paranormal that got you interested in the field?
Well, there wasn't really one specific thing. It's strange things have always happened to me all my life. So it's just kind of natural for me to do this. I have a very natural curiosity. One of my first memories when I was about 6 years old is seeing a ghost in my parents' house. Of course, nobody ever believes kids, and I only seen it the once. And then when I was about 9 years old, my brother and his wife lived in a house that was haunted, and I was actually playing with a ghost. I would throw the ball up the stairs, and the ghost would throw the ball back down. I didn't know it was a ghost. It looked just like a little normal boy to me in overalls.
So, it looked exactly like a human? Like a normal person?
Just like a human, yeah.
Wow.
It didn't have that wispy appearance to it. It was just this little blonde boy in overalls. He was probably about 6 years old. And when I asked my sister-in-law about it, she says, there's no other kids here. My two nephews were just babies at the time, and it wasn't them. So I had to go and look, but nobody was upstairs. He just ran off into one of the other rooms.
Damn, that's weird.
Oh, my sister-in-law accepted it. I was very lucky that my parents encouraged it. As long as I had a paying job.
What kind of clothing was he wearing? Like old-fashioned or?
He was wearing blue workman's overalls with a red plaid shirt.
So
he was a very cute little boy.
Interesting. What about cryptid sightings? Have you ever seen anything in line with little people?
Well, I saw a Bigfoot when I was 12. I was climbing through a barbed wire fence. It was about spring of the year. And I was at 5 o'clock at night, and I was heading back to my parents' house. And I had gotten my sock caught in the barb of the barbed wire. And I had to turn to unhook it. And there he was standing at the tree. He was dark black. He was close to 7 feet at least. He was a big one. And we just looked at each other, and it was very slow motion. And it took my brain a minute to figure out what I was looking at. And he had scratched himself, and I kind of snapped out of it, and I pulled my foot out of the barbed wire, ripping my sock, and I ran back to my parents' house. It did scare me, just the shock of it. He didn't seem like he wanted to hurt me, but I was scared for that week because my bedroom was on the ground floor. And every time the dogs barked, I thought Bigfoot was going to come and look in the window. Damn. So I put cardboard over the windows. It wasn't. And then I regretted it later that I didn't stay there and say something or do something. And
can you describe what you saw in good detail, like what it looked like, his facial features and everything?
Well, he had the typical Bigfoot nose, kind of flat and wide. He was maybe 100 yards from me. And, flat nose, dark brown eyes. I could see some of his ears. I could even see his fingernails, which were flat. His hands were big. I couldn't see his feet, though. He was, like I said, he was black, and his hair was about this long. Very typical black-colored Bigfoot. But
really
yeah, he
muscular?
didn't want to hurt me at all.
Muscular?
Yep, big, yep, very broad. But he was quite beautiful.
Wow. So they're actually good looking?
Yep.
They're not like scary looking monsters?
Well, they're unexpected.
Uh-huh.
That's for sure. I had been playing around in that area for a couple of hours, and, it made me wonder how long he'd been watching me. So mostly I scared myself.
So it was hard for you to even process what you're seeing. You just looked at it and it's like computing it for a
it was
second?
like slow motion. I was like, I think he looked at me the same way. But I've never heard where Bigfoot has actually ever hurt anybody.
Yeah, I've heard some stories, but I'm not sure of the validity of those stories. And you never can ever tell, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Have you seen anything else? Like, I know you're telling me about seeing some kind of little troll-like creature.
The little people. Yeah, and it's funny because up until I started doing this research, I had completely forgotten about it. My aunt and uncle and 2 cousins lived in a house, very old house, didn't have running water. And we had to go upstairs to use the bathroom with a curtain and a pail. Old house. And I was using the bathroom, and the curtain was open just a little bit, and I just happened to see something moving, and I thought maybe it was the cat. And no, it wasn't the cat. It come from behind a pile of clothes, and I'm just kind of looking and looking. And I'm like, no. No, I was about 8, so, and pulled my pants up, ran downstairs, and I told my mother, I just saw a little troll. Oh, no, you didn't. You're seeing things. Again, parents don't believe their kids. And
ignorant parents.
My cousins were outside playing. They're just a couple years older than me, and I told them I saw something. And my male cousin, he's like, "Did you see the troll?" I'm like, "Yeah." And they had seen him several times. They think that he lived in the walls. And at night when they were asleep, if he left their soft drinks or chips on the floor, he would come and steal them.
So he seemed to like sugary things, like a lot of stories talk about the Fae liking sugary things.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, he liked, it would be Pepsi at the time and probably Doritos, I think.
Dang. And can you describe, in the best detail you can, what the little troll thing looked like height, skin color, nose,
He
everything?
He was about a foot and a little bit tall. So I was foot and a half tall. He wasn't very tall at all.
Like that
he was
tall?
a greenish color. Yeah, about that tall.
Holy cow, that's just super tiny.
Yeah, just a little guy. About foot and a half tall. He was greenish color. He had pointed ears. They were like mine, pointed.
Interesting.
He had black hair that stuck up on his head, just wispy, not a lot of it. He had hair on his chest. He had big hands, too, very pudgy, wide hands. And he wore like a little loincloth, but no shirt, and he had a little pot belly.
Kind of sounds like the typical description of a troll, like, the ones with the round belly,
Yeah.
the hair sticking straight up.
Yep.
It's crazy to think
Yeah.
that they'd actually be basing it off a real thing. Like, I thought that was just fantasy, you know what I mean? Growing up.
Yeah, I used to collect the troll dolls. My kids loved them, so I collected them for them. So
What kind of
I don't
nose?
have any now.
What kind of nose did it have?
It was flat.
Okay. And
Yeah, flat nose.
Were his ears large or were they small or?
I think they were quite tall and a bit on the wide side, but as for huge, no, not really.
Okay, so
He had big, wide eyes.
So
very wide.
large eyes, or
Yeah.
Okay, so, because I hear stories about little people. One of my friend's moms, when she was 8, I was telling you about this. She had one grabbing her in Barrow, Alaska, and I was trying to kidnap her. And she said it had very large, like neon green eyes, like the color of the eyes were neon green. And it made me think, are these things subterranean?
Flat. I would imagine they are because that's what all the stories tell me.
And the big eyes
But
would match that. Like they need low
yes,
light vision. You know what I mean?
yes, there is a story about them living underground because they don't like light. It hurts their eyes.
The same.
Now, this guy's eyes were very dark. They could have been like dark brown or black.
Oh, one more question. One more question. Could you see the whites of his eyes, or was it solid black?
I think he had the whites of his eyes, but what I saw, they were black.
Because I heard beady eyes like more. You know how we have an iris and we have whites. Theirs are more bigger, so
Yeah.
you can barely see any white of their eyes.
Yes, it was like that.
Okay. Interesting. Wow, that's amazing. And you only
He
saw
had
it that
really thick eyebrows.
Oh, so they're bushy?
No, I saw it 2 other times.
Oh,
Yeah,
man,
really bushy.
tell us about the other times you saw it.
Once was in the attic.
Okay.
My cousin would collect Pepsi bottles and she'd put them up in the attic. Now the attic was open, and there was a hole in the floor where you could see the garage, and that's how us kids snuck up in. And we saw him up in there once, and he was gone. He went through another hole. He was gone. And another time he was outside. We were out playing with the dog, the hound, and it was barking, and we looked over and we saw him, and he ducked behind the house.
Wow. That's incredible. So you actually seen them. That's so rare.
Yeah, and like I said, until I had started doing this research and investigating them, I'd completely forgot about it.
You know, I heard, sorry to talk so much, but a guy I know in Canada, he lives in Montreal, I think. He goes trapping a lot and hunting, and he saw a little person house, and he encountered them, but he said he has trouble remembering. He can't remember anymore. It's like they're messed with his memory or something. I don't know.
I had a talk with the Mi'kmaq First Nations today, and he believes that they do that. They choose to make us remember, but only if they want to. But there are ways that you can overcome it.
Like how?
Like with my research, and it just suddenly popped in there.
Oh, wow.
So it must have been a trigger.
I wonder if you have more memories, like if you went to hypnosis or something, if you'd like remember more.
I did a past life regression a few years ago. Not quite the same thing, though. But I think our brains are more like computers. There's a lot more in there, just on a different hard drive.
Yeah, because I've heard a few people say that they've seen him in their house, and one of my friends has him living in her grandparents' house, and she says there's an 8-inch diameter hole in the basement, and she described them similar to yours, but she said they had really big noses, so I guess there's different species of little people. She also said it had grayish skin and wispy hair on the top, almost bald, and very skinny, about 6 inches tall.
Oh, sick people.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of them are like that. They come in all different shapes, sizes. Some of them are very hairy.
Mm-hmm.
But you can still tell they're, excuse me, little people or hidden people. But they're just very hairy, covered in hair, and they're not particularly the nice kind.
So the hairy ones are bad?
Really mischievous. They steal chickens and small livestock like that, eggs, ducks. This is a story from Mexico, I do believe. And they're quite nasty. These same people accused them of stealing cats. Their cat started to disappear, and they lost a small dog. And
Wow.
they just can't seem to get rid of them.
I'd be trying to lure them so I can get them on camera. That'd be pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah, she says they're very fast.
That's why you need high
Almost
frame
a
rate.
blur sometimes. Yeah.
Actually, my friend in Barrow had a trail cam out, right? And they had it, and something came out of the ground. It looked humanoid, but it was so fast that the only pictures that came out was blurry black images of like a humanoid figure, like really small, running by really fast.
I'd like to see that. Maybe slow it down or something. The video.
I think the shutter rate, like, you know, how fast it can capture an image, like certain cameras have really fast shutters. They can just capture an image like that. you need something really fast in order to capture something that fast. You know what I mean? Not a typical lame camera. So before we get into more of your research, I'm curious to know about your name, Robyn MoonShadow Dale. Where do you get the moonshadow part from?
Excuse me. Back about 22 years ago, when we were fighting for our Métis status, and Métis is First Nation. It means mixed. So I'm First Nations and white. We have it now, of course. But we used to have these small little powwows, little get-togethers, and people would come from places like Sault Ste. Marie and other bands that were also Métis. And the chief of one of these tribes, I was talking to him, and I told him I would like to have a First Nations name. And he looks at me for a minute, and he said, come back in a bit. And I did. I came back in a bit, and he said, Moonshadow. I was hoping for some kind of an animal name. And I'm like, Moonshadow. Now, I know what a moonshadow is. And I said, why moonshadow? And he said, because of what you grew up with. And I'm like, okay. He says, there's always light behind the darkness. I'm like, okay, I can understand that.
Is it because you investigate the unknown, the darkness, or what?
It's because, odd things happened to me.
Uh-huh.
And I was bullied a lot in school for my beliefs. And, of course, it wasn't typical for a girl to be investigating paranormal.
Wow.
So I got teased every day.
You've been investigating this stuff for a long time, haven't you? Ever since you're a little child?
Yes.
Same here, honestly.
Since I was about 6 years old.
Except my version of investigating was just like trying to find them, like going out in the woods and doing all this stuff. You know?
I wanted to read, and if I couldn't read something, I would take it to one of my siblings, usually my sister. And my mother was very much into Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. And every time we saw a book at school, we would bring it home, and I would read it. Now, back then, there wasn't a word for cryptids. Everything just fell into the realm of the paranormal. And now, of course, we have the word cryptid, so I do both.
Yeah. I found that researching little people, because it's one of my passions to research because I really want to find them, that you have to use a whole bunch of different terms in order to figure out, for different cultures, various cultures, about the little people. Like, you never know what they're going to call them. Everywhere calls them something different. So with that, why don't we talk a little bit about some of the research and interesting stuff you've discovered throughout the years?
Well, this started at the beginning of the year. I got an email just shortly after I started writing a monthly blog for the Curious 14. And the email was simple. It asked me, have you heard of the little people in the Arctic? I had heard about them, but not very much. So I started investigating. And one lead led to another. And I started making notes. And I'm like, there's something to this. And as I moved on with the research, we've got at least 15 different types of little people in America, 5 in Canada so far, and I have found 2 in Mexico. Of course, there are other places in the world. I mean, besides Ireland, there are China, Africa, Australia, Denmark, Sweden, England, of course, Germany, Greece, Finland.
Damn.
I mean, they're all over.
Everywhere.
And of course, they look a little bit different. Some are a little hairy. Some look like us. Some look like goblins. Some look like tall gnomes. Some have the big nose like you described. But they're varied, just like people are. And of course, then there are the elves that look like little Keebler elves, pointed hat, pointed ears. The Cherokee say their little people look just like them.
So, Can you tell me the characteristics and differences between the various types?
Well, the troll ones are a lot like that I saw, and it's also very typical of what they call a pugwudgie in New England. And people are very afraid of them. They have poisoned arrows, they say. And one woman told me that when she was walking in the forest, she let her dog go ahead. Her dog went ahead. And when she got up to her dog, it took off. And then she heard it yip. And so she went to see what happened. And she saw one of these pugwudgies, which very much troll-like again, had hit her dog in the head and killed her dog. And she ran off back to her house. Her husband had to go and get the dog.
Was it dead?
But that pugwudgie, yeah, unfortunately it was. And there was another incident in New England of a woman and a dog, and it had hit the dog, but it didn't kill the dog. And she screamed, and the pugwudgie ran off.
Damn. So they just don't like people or something. The one that you saw, even you said it was glaring at you, right?
It was glaring at me. It didn't seem to like us at all.
I don't know why I think that's
not
funny.
at all. Well, it's so little, right? And
yeah.
You shouldn't be scared of them because they're little, but everything I read says they're fast and strong. And yeah, like that. Like, what are you doing?
I'm going to steal the stuff in this house.
Yeah, it was like something you didn't want to mess with it.
Okay, so when you say fast, can you describe like how fast and how people describe their speed?
Yeah, they say that they use teleportation, but it could be because they are so fast.
Yeah.
And they're strong, very strong, like one could pick up a deer all by itself and be gone with it.
You know what I was thinking? You hear stories about the Fae and the little people?
The little people?
And you hear about people's and time distortion. What if they're out of sync with our time and that's why they're so fast? Because my mom's seen them and they're moving like a hummingbird almost.
They do like to mess with people because they're so mischievous. All of them are, with the exception of about two, they're pranksters. Huh. They like to mess with us a lot. Pull pranks and jokes. And come into our houses sometimes just to mess with us and joke around with us.
I wonder why. Maybe they think we're dumb.
They could. Maybe they're bored.
Have you heard about how long they can live?
No.
Oh.
No. But the Cherokee has a story about one of their folk heroes' wife. His name was, I'm sorry if I get this wrong, it's Mosop, and he was a giant. And his wife was one of the little people. And many, many years after white people came, in a storm, a medicine woman got a knock on her door, and it was one of the little people. And he needed her help. So he blindfolded her and took her underground to where my wife was. And she was very sick. And the medicine woman helped her for 3 days and 3 nights. And they gave her a basket of gold, I believe it was, for helping his wife. And this was supposed to have taken place a couple hundred years after.
After white people?
After the white people came, yes.
Holy cow, that means they're still alive here. Like all over.
There is a story that I read, of course, up your way. And again, I'm sorry if I get this wrong. It's Urtiak?
Ijagak.
The Ijagak?
Ijagak, yeah, it's the Eskimo word.
Hunters, a couple of hunters have reported that when they shot an elk or a deer, they knew that they shot it and saw it go down, but by the time they got to it, it was gone. And all they had was the little people prints in the snow. 1 or 2 prints, just snatched up the deer or elk and they were gone. Boop, just gone.
There's actually a lot of stories like that here. It happens quite a bit.
There was another one about some helicopter pilot seeing a deer on its side really fast going through, and they believed the little people were carrying it.
Mm-hmm. Like it was sideways, like dead?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Sideways and just really fast going into the bush. Of course, we have sightings here in Ontario, of course, and I've only got one so far, but I don't have the details on that yet. And Nova Scotia, with the Micmacs, they have some. We have some in New Brunswick and Manitoba and British Columbia.
What is the gist of the story that you heard in your area? The gist of it?
That they live in the rocks. Very common that they live in the rocks. And she was about 10 years old when she saw it. She's going to forward me more details over the weekend. But besides myself and my cousin, that's the only second two people, myself and her, that have seen little people here as of yet.
I heard a lot of stories of them living in the rock or the mountains or hills or whatever. Do you think they're related, these little people, in any way to the missing 401 cases?
No. No, I think that's something completely different. That whole missing people is very suspect. It gives me the creeps. Do I think there's something to it? Possibly. I mean, there's a lot of other reasons why people go missing besides some creatures snatching them up.
True.
But there is always the possibility that there is something else out there.
What are some other stories that you heard of the little people, interesting ones?
The story that you and I talked about the little boy.
Peltier Mountain?
That was taken by the little people.
Go ahead and go over that from the beginning for me again.
Okay. The man was out hunting on a snowmobile, and he was going to go to one site. Didn't have much luck. So before he went home, he went to this other site, and it was like 60 miles away. And he found this little boy all alone, all by himself in the middle of nowhere. And the little boy was lost and confused and didn't know what had happened. And he brought him back because the little boy was part of their village. And after they got the little boy home, the little boy told him that he had been taken by the little people underground, and he saw lots of little people, and they let him go the next day. Unlike some of the stories of the hunters coming back and finding a little window, and looking in it and thinking they're only looking in the window of the little person's house for about 30 seconds and 10 years goes by.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard stories like that before. Even in Ireland.
Feathered. Yes, that's true. When the wee folk take them. There was one about the wee folk took them as a little girl and they came back as an adult and didn't remember what had happened to them. And people say that the wee folk had taken them. That was a lot of stories I read.
You're seeing this correlation across the world, not just in North America?
Yes, everywhere. All over the world, even in Africa, and they're a little afraid of them because they have spears and they don't like people.
Yeah, I've heard the Tolkoshki. Is that what they're called in Africa, South Africa? They're pretty...
that's one of them.
They're pretty scared of them. They're very scared. They put their beds higher up, like on bricks or something, so that they can't get them in their sleep.
Yes, that's true, yes. Yes. And then we have the little people of Pryor Mountain. They're very helpful to the people. They taught them the ways of medicine and getting along. And if they take a liking to a child, they will watch over the child the rest of their life. They're called the Narumbi. And in Nova Scotia, like I was talking about, the Micmac called them Witlaktuba. And I hope I got that right.
What's that mean? Do you know?
Little people of the wilderness.
So what's the deal with those little people in their pointy hats? I've always wondered that. In your research, have you figured anything out about that?
It's camouflage. Much like a gnome, they want to look like a mushroom or a toadstool. And people say they come in different colors. So I would imagine they were trying to mimic the outdoors. And it makes you wonder how many times you've walked by a bush and not noticed a little person with a green hat on.
Yeah, my friend was in the tundra with his girlfriend in Chivak in Alaska. And I showed you the picture of that little fish drying rack. I'll post on this. You could walk right by that and not see it. Like, literally, it could be like an inch from your foot and you wouldn't notice it because it's covered in moss. Like, how many times have we walked by these little people and not noticed? How numerous are they? Like, are they rare or are they extraordinarily common? Are they flesh or are they spirit?
I think they're a little bit of both, as I've been told recently. Some are as real as you and I, and some are very much spirit. And, of course, then there are the tales that get told over the years and change a little bit. But I'm going way back as far as I can to the basics of it, before there was any fairy glamour added to it. Because I do believe that they are proto-pygmies.
And what could you describe or explain what proto-pygmies are?
Like Homo floresiensis.
Floresiensis.
Who was found in 2003, and it stood about 3 feet 6 inches high. Of course, the size of most little people. Now, he was around when people were around, and he lived out on the island, of course, of Flores in Indonesia. Now, it is possible that the little people crossed into Canada and America and went right on through across the land bridge, like animals and other people did. And, of course, they could have made little canoes and come over, but with the little person that they found, it does provide some evidence that at least there were little people at one time. But, of course, I still believe they were around.
The natives in Indonesia still claim that they exist, and they call them the Ibu Gogo.
Oh, the Ibu Gogo. Yes, there's a story about how they were stealing children from a village, and they chased them into a cave and killed them by fire or stabbing them. I don't remember which it was.
Do you know what they did to the children, the little people?
I do believe they ate them.
Wow, so they eat humans, some of them.
There are a couple of tribes that are said to be cannibals. I haven't looked too much into that just yet.
That's disturbing.
That is. I don't think it's so much their size, but because of their strength, you have to worry about numbers, because numbers can overwhelm. You got 50 little people after you, you're in trouble.
Yeah. I'll tell you a little story that I've heard from my friends in Barrow. They were out at Freshwater Lake in Barrow, Alaska, which is the furthest north town there. And they were chilling in their truck, and it was foggy out. And they saw, it was still summerish, I guess. And they saw little people come out of the ground, like 20 or 30 of them. And they said they're hairy, and their fur looked like the same as the tundra almost. And they had hair like on their heads and everything. And they had big eyes, and they're walking in a big group. And then when they saw them in the car, they ran, and they jumped into the ground, like a tunnel or something was there, and they all just went one after the other, and they just vanished.
There are stories like that in America, that they have tunnels throughout the ground.
And one of my to collaborate what you're just saying, a lady was berry picking here in Nome, Alaska, by the airport here. And while she was picking on one of these little mounds, something punched the earth upwards like it was annoyed that she was on top. And she got really scared and took off. She thought it was little people.
Well, we do know they like berries. Berries are quite a common thing. They like to receive berries for gifts, cornbread. A friend of mine, when he was very young, about 4 years old, I believe he said, he was with his mother, and like me, of course, he looks after the animals behind her house. And she took him one day to see the little people, and she gave that little person toast, lightly breaded, and 2 boiled eggs. And they stepped back behind the bushes and watched. But he said that he would remember it for the rest of his life because he probably wouldn't see one again. Because some of them only show themselves to children.
I wonder why that is. Do you think it's because children have a gift, or do you think it's because they feel less threatened by the child?
When you're a child, you're more open to things. When you grow up, people tell you such and such doesn't exist, and you tend to believe that because that becomes the norm then. But when you're little, you believe in everything. Santa Claus, Easter Bunny, Tooth Fairy. You believe those things are real. So you're open to those. And like I said, when you're adult, you just stop believing in things.
Yeah, a lot of adults here in Gnome and in Alaska see the little people, though. It's not just kids.
They're afraid of them up there. Is that correct? Most people are?
I think, yes, that's true. But I think the reason for that is because of westernization, or more appropriately, Christianization. They made the native people feel like their beliefs were satanic. I even had a pastor tell me that little people were messengers of the devil, and if you follow them, they'll lead you to hell. I was like, okay.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, they should never have done that. They should have just left all of our cultures alone. That's for sure. Maybe they'd learn something.
I believe that's the main reason for the fear of them, though. That's personal opinion right there.
I think it is mostly people hear about little people and they think about fairies, little tiny winged people. But it wasn't until Victoria age that they actually started putting wings on them so they would be more angelic-like.
I have a theory about stuff like that, like mythology. A lot of the stories that we hear, like of vampires and stuff, I think a lot of them come from the true stories of the little people and how they don't like sunlight. And then they start building from that these stories of other creatures that don't really exist, like vampires.
Well, they were so superstitious when it came to vampires and werewolves. Anybody who had even a blood disorder and was very pale looking, or somebody who had, hypertosis?
Mm-hmm.
Where they can't go outside, or the sun will burn them. That would be some kind of a monster or a demon to them.
But I think they got the idea from that, from old stories of little people, these things that live underground in the darkness that don't like the sunlight.
It could be a combination of many different things as well.
True. Robyn, could you describe the different types of little people from different regions and give the name of each one and describe them a little bit and tell where each one's from so we can get an idea of the scope of the little people phenomenon?
They are the Nimby, and they come from the western United States, and the Shoshone and the Aparo. Talk about them, and they are between 2 inches to 3 feet tall. Cherokee, the Cherokee little people. Okay, they call their little people Sunwise Sonombist.
And I'll put the spelling right there so people can see it. And can you tell me about them?
These little people were helpful to the Cherokee. They have stories of how they've taken a liking to children and taught them the ways of medicine and healing, and turned them into great healers or turned them into great chiefs and showed them visions of the future. The Cherokee knew through the little people long before white men came because they had visions of them through the little people. And that all the buffalo were going to die. He saw all the buffalo just fade away.
So they knew the future because of the little people?
Yes.
Wow.
Yep.
I'm going to have to go into that story and do an episode about that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's also in the book you've got. And, of course, there's the Pugwatees in New England that just hate us. They will go out of their way to hurt us. And they have poison arrows.
Did they have a reason for why they hate us? A historical reason?
It is said that Mossop and his wife favored American Indians more than the Pugwudgies, and the Pugwudgies were jealous and started a war with the American Indians. And they pleaded to Mossop for help.
Can you say who Motop is real quick, or whoever?
Mossop is a giant of their people. And his wife was one of the little people, but not a Pugwudgie. They went to him for help. And he sent all the little Pugwudgies away. He threw them all over, picked them up, threw them all over the world or the country. And some of them came back. Now, about this time, Mossop had gone off somewhere else to do whatever, and they pleaded to his wife. And his 2 sons went out to deal with them that time. And the Pugwudgies are said to have killed both his sons.
Damn.
And when Mossop got back, of course, his wife was very upset. And they just annihilated most of the Pugwudgies, but some of them, of course, ran away.
It's almost a genocide.
It is. And in one story, it says that the Pugwudgies had tricked Mossop and got him into the water and shot him with these poisoned arrows and killed him. And another story says that he was so devastated by the loss of his sons that he just went away.
Those are pretty good reasons to start a blood feud, that's for sure.
That is for sure.
Or a race war, even. I don't even know what you'd call it. A species war? Different species of hominids?
That could be. Mossop could have just stepped on them and squashed them, but there were so many by then, it must have been hard to eradicate them.
Interesting.
They were helpful at one time until they got jealous.
They just basically had a war. It happens to humans all the time. Like, there's stuff like this that happens between human tribes, so.
That is true.
Damn. That's a good reason to hate us, though. I wonder if they're still mad at us today. They probably are. They're probably still angry.
They've been accused of pushing people off cliffs and making it look like a suicide.
Maybe it's just a general dislike of humans from that history. Like, it started from there, and they just had the prejudice still against us, like freaking humans or whatever.
Because that continues on today.
Because it happens in family lines. Like, if someone hates black people, then their kids will, and it goes on for like generations. It happens.
Yes, it could exactly be that way. Because you're not born to hate, you're taught to hate.
Can I tell you a thought I had and a theory I had about little people?
What is it?
A long time ago, we had a massive disaster that forced people to live underground, right? Like, let's say we had a meteor strike or something, or some kind of volcanic activity that made people have to live underground in order to survive.
Yes.
I think what happened is we had a disaster like that a very long time ago. And then when the disaster cleared, some of the humans decided to come out, and then other people wanted to continue living underground because they preferred it. And the path of evolution changed the people from the outside and the people on the inside. So the people that stayed underground became the little people, and they evolved to adapt better for underground life. And then we were the people that came outside of the underground after the disaster.
That is an interesting theory.
And that could explain
an interesting theory.
where we both were the same people a long time ago, and then we diverted. Who knows how long ago that was, though? I have no idea. It's just a thought I have in my head, which would make sense why they evolved to have larger eyes and smaller statures to survive underground conditions while we changed up here.
It could be. There are many different theories about the little people, of course, and of course I have my own theories as well.
Can I hear one of your theories?
Well, with Homo floresiensis, and he was still living at the same time as people, of course. And it could possibly be that the little people came across the land bridge and they just followed the animals.
But how do we know that the little people originated from there just because we found their skeletons from there? They could have originated from somewhere else.
Exactly so. And of course, some native cultures believe that they have always been here. They were here before any of us got here.
Like the Hawaiians, they say that when they went there, the Menehune were already living there.
Yes, that is another thing as well. And they built the fish pond. There is a story about a brother and sister with the Menehune, and they weren't supposed to watch them work one night, and they got turned into the stone pillars because they got caught watching them. Okay, we're on the Willa Willa, and they are from the Lakota people.
Willa Willa?
With the Willa Willa. They've said to have been around before any of us, of course. The Willa Willa are said to be smart little people, and they have tiny hands, and that's how they're recognized. They are feared, but they've not hurt anybody. I think it just makes them uncomfortable to see them, like we've heard many times. And then we have the Jogowan, and they're more of a spirit than a little person. They're a natural spirit. They inhabit rivers and rocks and caves beside streams, and they're said to protect the water in their area.
Sounds like fairies.
It does almost. We know that fairies are very territorial about where they are.
Interesting that across the ocean that they'd have similar mythology to the fairy folk that are supposed to be guardians of the nature, and they say the same thing in that tribe.
They do, yes, and they like little children. Most of the little people like little children. And if you abuse them or are bad to them, they will take them away.
Wow, that's what they say in Inupiat culture. That's crazy. Where'd you hear that one from?
That comes from many different tribes.
Yeah,
many.
They say they'll only take people who come from bad homes, kids, if their parents are abusive or something.
Yes. Yes, if they're picked on too much or they're abused and they run off into the woods, the little people will take them away.
But hopefully they don't eat them like what you're saying in Indonesia.
There is a story, and I'm sorry I can't remember from which tribe it came. He refused to grow up. And although he was older, he enjoyed spending more time out in the woods and playing than he did hunting or fishing or any of the oncoming adult responsibilities like we were all taught. And his father told him, it's time for you to grow up, and you're going to go out and you're going to learn to be an adult. And he ran off crying and crying. And a little person came to him and told him, don't worry, come back tomorrow. And he went back the next day, and they took him in, and he became a little person, or he never grew up after that. He stayed the same age forever. Much like Peter Pan, maybe.
Sounds exactly like Peter Pan. Maybe that's where she got her story from, some mythology.
That could be. There are the Qualnaksha, and they're from Choctaw legend. And they're 2 or 3 feet tall, and they are referred to as pygmies. And they live deep in the thick forest, and their homes are in caves or hidden underground. And if a child is out alone, they'll take the child, and they must travel for a long way, climbing hills. But they let the little boy go after a while.
Yeah, I'm starting to see a very common theme in every culture. They like children. They live underground.
If they take a liking to a child, and it has to be a special child, they'll watch over them their entire life. Always keep them protected and make sure that they want for nothing. They'll always have good luck. There are the Mangomesk, and it is one of the Jibbaways. and they have narrow faces. They seem moody because sometimes they can be malevolent or benevolent, and sometimes they'll capsize canoes, tear fish nets, and cause other mischief. Like I said, they have narrow faces, and they are said to be so thin that if they stand sideways, you can't see them.
No.
Much like the stick people. There is the Mangoeski in Connecticut, and a few years ago, while they were putting in a housing development, Mahowans, and again, I apologize if I pronounce it wrong, needed them to stop any kind of construction. It would have ruined the little people's home. The little people there protect the natives, and they have rock formations where these little people live. And of course, they won, which was very good. It was for a housing development, I believe.
Sounds kind of like Ireland, how they avoid certain areas for construction for the little people.
There are the passe of one of Algonquins, and they are about 2 feet tall, and their name literally means little ones. They are portrayed as mischievous, benign little spirits who like to play tricks on people just to play with them, and they were generally helpful.
It's interesting how some places think they're spirits and others don't. Makes me wonder which one's true.
As I continue to investigate, I'll find out.
I want to find a way to actually meet them and interact with them. I actually mapped out locations of where they lived. I know multiple places exactly where they live.
And then we have the Mimigoweski, and they're more of a water-dwelling spirit. They like to make arrows. It seems to be a hobby. They like to play drums. They make baskets, and they're very good at rock art. And then I have 5 that I haven't researched yet, but I have their names. In the Philippines, they're called Duwandi. One of the ones in Mexico are Duwandi. In Greece, they're, of course, called pygmies. In Germany, one of the names are called Kobold. And I even have one going back to the Aztecs, and they are called Chinquic.
Chinquic.
Chinquic. And, of course, there's the Tommyknockers.
Ooh, tell me a little bit about the Tommyknockers.
The Tommyknockers were said to be little dwarf-like people with, again, large eyes, who either warned the Cornish miners or caused a mine to collapse. But they always heard that knocking and had time to get out. And people who didn't believe in the knocking would stay and work, and of course, they died. And many people say that they used to take some cakes and treats down to thank them for saving their lives. And they got so that they would just take them in once a day to bring the miners good luck. And when the Cornish came to America and Canada to work in the mines, they continued that tradition.
So they actually seen them?
They'd see them quite a few times. And sometimes they would be working alongside them, helping the miners out. Of course, this is going back decades.
I'm going to show you a video real quick because this is related. This guy was doing cave exploration for a mine on a flashlight review. And when he was way deep in the mine, he heard this bizarre speaking coming from everywhere. And it was very clear on the audio, and it scared him. And I want you to listen to it, and I want to see what you think, if it could be related to the Tommyknockers or what. Share. Start at 12 minutes and 5 seconds. Click that. Copy and paste. I just want you to listen to this end part.
Do you hear that?
Tell me what you think. I want to see if you think this
Sounds
is
like
So I'll be quiet for a minute and I'll let you listen.
what, is that wind? I don't know if you can hear that on the camera. Do you hear that? It stopped. Well, I don't know what that is. That doesn't sound like wind, but that's crazy. Don't know if that's a bird or I don't know what that is. It almost sounds like snakes, but wow. I've heard some weird stuff in mines, but that is definitely creepy. I don't know what that is. So let's get out of here and head back out to the portal. That was weird.
Whoa, no, that's something else. No, I didn't like that at all.
Do you hear that? Sounds like, what, is that wind? I don't know if you can hear that on the camera. Do you hear that? It stopped. Wow. I don't know what that is. That doesn't sound like wind, but that's crazy. Don't know if that's a bird or I don't know what that is. It almost sounds like snakes, but wow. I've heard some weird stuff in mines, but that is definitely creepy. I don't know what that is. So let's get out of here and head back out to the portal. That was weird. I don't hear it.
What do you think that was? I thought
Oh,
maybe little people, but I wasn't sure. Or spirits or something.
It's spirits,
That's weird, wasn't it?
and they're threatening it. They're threatening him.
Really? How do you know?
Yeah, the hair on the back of my neck is standing up.
Damn. Yeah, that's pretty interesting though, huh? Let's continue on with little people from around the world. Just briefly tell me all the places that you know for sure that they live.
Okay, well, we know for sure that they're in your area. We could possibly have some in mind. It is said that they like to live near lakes, and the Great Lakes region are one of their primary haunts, so to speak. They are also in America, of course. People are still seeing them today, and recently, like just past this summer, they've been seen. And we know that there are some in Mexico.
So contrary to popular belief from scientists about the Homo floresiensis, they're not extinct.
Exactly. Or it is, okay, or it could be a cousin to Homo florensis, the Hobbit, of course. Or it is something completely different.
All right, Robyn, do you have any final thoughts or anything on the subject?
Well, if you see a little person or know of somebody who has, you can contact me at Robyn, ROBYN, MoonShadow at TCS, excuse me.
Okay, so they contact you with their stories?
And yes,
Okay, and you have a lot of research that you've done already, right?
yes,
Okay.
yes, it's ongoing.
So Robyn, you write a blog, correct?
I write a blog at The Curious 14.
Is there anything else you'd like to say on about little people or anything? Anything you want to add?
Whatever region you happen to live in and you come across a little person, be very careful because you don't know what type of little person you're getting into trouble with. And all these stories are passed down in order for us to know how to deal with them properly. So do your research.
So it's potential, you have a potential to die if they're the wrong type.
They will come to your house if they are offended, and they will cause mischief. Most cultures believe that if you see them, you are not to say anything. Pretend you didn't see them at all.
Why?
They don't like to be seen by people.
Huh. I wonder why.
I don't know, but I'm going to find out.
Yeah. I want to find that out too. If you hear anything, let me know for sure, okay?
Definitely.
All right, Robyn. It was fantastic talking to you. Got a lot of interesting points down today. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be really interested in the subject.
I hope they enjoy it as much as I enjoy researching and investigating them.
Yeah, keep it up. Keep up your research. You're doing, you know more than most people I've ever met, actually.
Thanks. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun.
This is really not a very well-known subject. Like, not many people are in the know when it comes to little people.
And I think sometimes if they have a sighting, they're afraid to say anything.
Yeah.
They're afraid of being ridiculed or made fun of, or people in the white coats might get called.
Yeah, actually, we should send that message out to anyone watching. A lot of times when people see little people, they feel almost like they're crazy or they're going crazy, and no one's going to believe them, so they'll never tell anybody. And I think that used to be the case for Bigfoot too, until Bigfoot became mainstream.
It was.
And then when Bigfoot became mainstream, now people are like, "Oh, I saw a Bigfoot! Oh my god!" and they're okay with talking about it. Go back 20 years, and nope.
It is. It was for Bigfoot research back in the day. It was very much like pulling teeth.
Because I know people who've seen little people. I know people who've seen little people, and they thought they were going crazy, but then their friends saw it with them, so they knew they weren't crazy. Like, it just doesn't seem possible.
No, it's just our brains have been trained in a certain way that if it's not normal looking, you didn't see it.
That's what happened to you when you saw Bigfoot. It took you a minute to process it.
It did. Even though I knew what it was, I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
That's amazing. That must have been, like, life-changing almost.
It was. It was definitely a wow moment.
That's amazing. Well, I look forward to future interviews with you, Robyn. This was great.
Oh, anytime, too. Thanks for having me on your show.
All right. Well, I'll talk to you later, Robyn. Thanks. Let's do this
Have
again.
a good night.
You too.
Definitely.
Bye.
Good night. Bye.